For a brief period between 1969 and the late 1990s, the FCC introduced public access television, a platform where anyone, regardless of talent, background, or intent, could create and broadcast their own television programs straight into people's homes. While most of it was harmless fun, there were a handful of these shows that were marked by an unintentionally creepy or disturbing style. So today, I'd like to take a look at the disturbing public access Iceberg and all it has to offer, from the somewhat unsettling to the downright blood-curdling. Before we get started, let me explain what an iceberg list is, just in case someone hasn't heard of it. An iceberg chart is an image used to segment information by levels of obscurity. The further down the iceberg you go, the less well known the content being discussed is. In our case today, the further down we are will also mean that the content is more disturbing or creepy. Since this topic is so obscure, the iceberg we're looking at today is actually of my own creation. So if you're curious, I'll have it up on my Instagram so you can take a better look afterwards. Oh, and one more warning really quick, because these shows are from a different time and completely unmoderated pretty much, many of them may contain imagery and language aimed at adult audiences, and may contain controversial or vulgar subject matters at times. I'll also throw a content warning on screen like this at any point I feel it might be extra necessary. If any particular entry makes you uncomfortable, there will always be a timestamp in the description and the comments section to skip to the next one. Anyways, with all of that being said, I hope you enjoy, and let's jump in. The Rimini Riddle. The Rimini Riddle was an Irish children's public access TV show that featured a cast entirely of puppets. The show followed a group of siblings who, after their parents died, moved in with their aunt Vera. There they explore the various mysteries of their aunt's house, which apparently has something to do with a few Victorian-looking girls who drowned there. Even more disturbing for a kids show, it's heavily implied that the drowning wasn't an accident. And one of the main characters' pets, an otter, is implied to have murdered them and covered it up. And if the eerie plot wasn't enough to scare off any kids watching, the puppets themselves definitely were. They have these strange, almost melting-like designs that look kind of like rotten fruit, and these really annoying, high-pitched, shrill voices that are bone-chilling to listen to.
Let me out!
What's the matter with you?
It's the middle of the night.
I know it is. You were having a nightmare.
You can say that again.
My heart goes out to anyone who accidentally stumbled upon this strange monstrosity as a young child. Hopefully you don't still have puppet PTSD from watching this thing. The Flaccid Ego Show. The Flaccid Ego Show was a call-in TV show run by the self-proclaimed greatest psychic energy reader in New York. Although CB claimed to be clairvoyant, the host never gave a single actual reading in any of the episodes I've seen. Usually he would just criticize the callers for anything and everything, and then hang up on them when he eventually got bored. CB would also often lean so far back in his chair that you could barely even make out his face, more just the ghost of his blurry nose. In the grand finale and final episode of the show, CB broke character for the first time ever on air, and removed his iconic psychic costume to thank the viewers for the success of his program and leave TV forever. Nowadays, you can still find the Flaccid Ego Show on YouTube, with the newest upload as of writing being 3 months ago.
I am good. I'm better than that. I'm calm. And this next call is going to be wonderful. I can just feel it. I'm calm. I'm calm. Good evening.
Fucking genie.
Kiss my ass.
Raw time. Raw Time is easily my favorite show on this list. Airing out of Austin, Texas between the late 90s and early 2000s, Raw Time was a goth call-in style show where the host, Tina Rena, would have random conversations with completely random people. The pacing is quick and at times really hard to follow, but I think overall it's a super enjoyable experience. The host Tina Rena is charismatic and quick on her feet with comebacks and insults, and the style of humor displayed is really right up my alley. If you're ever doing some homework and you don't know what to put on in the background, Raw Time definitely fills that space for me, and I would suggest it for you too. Cloud 9. This was a program that aired from 1998 to 1999 and featured various cartoon blocks broken up by commentary given by 4 angel hosts. The teenage angels named Gabe, Rafalia, Michael, and Angela would provide segues between cartoon blocks and teach young viewers good morals in their short bits. Cloud 9 was originally part of a 2-year contract with a distributor called PAX TV, but it was eventually replaced at the end of its first year in 1999 by a new show called PAX Kids. Because of its very short run, Cloud 9 remained almost completely lost for a long time, until a few clips were uploaded to YouTube in 2022 by user Lugia's VHS Archive. Today, you can still find the clips on their channel, and as far as I know, these clips remain almost all we have of the show to this day, except a commercial that briefly mentioned it.
I cheated on that test.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, I did. So this means I don't go, right?
Wow, yeah. I'm just surprised that you'd stoop to cheating, Gabe.
Because only one episode of Cloud 9 has been found, it still remains partially lost media to this day, making it, in my opinion, one of the most interesting entries on this list. If you'd like to go check out the full episode, and the only one we have, I'll leave a link to Lugia VHS Archive's video in the description. Talk to Santa. Talk to Santa was a Christmas-themed public access TV show where kids, and occasionally weird adults, could chat with a holly jolly, costumed Santa live on air. Instead of being a simple, wholesome Christmas experience though, the show feels weirdly cynical because of the conversations Santa and his elves would have between calls. See, they wouldn't only talk about Christmas, but would also discuss very real adult topics like flash floods, Santa's Ford truck breaking down, and about how in New Orleans you'll, quote, see little children drinking 40s in the street. The tone of the whole thing was just a little too casual for the target audience. Honestly, at times, the whole thing just feels like they forgot they're talking to kids in the first place. Especially with their old school references that are just way out of place in a show like this. It's so strange. Now, although Santa and his helpers seem like pretty chill people to hang out with, their strange style of spreading the Christmas spirit definitely cements their place as one of the weirdest, little-known public access shows of all time.
Hello?
Hello. What would you like for Christmas?
A Brat doll.
A Brat doll? All the Britneys want Bratz dolls.
Another
Come on, let's
Brat
get
doll.
creative. You want some golf clubs or a Nintendo set?
Yeah.
You're pretty agreeable.
Hello?
Hello.
It's me, Donovan.
Hi, Donovan.
Your name's Donovan, like the 70s, like
Hi.
musician?
Are you feeling mellow yellow?
Yeah.
The Jerkbeast. Jerkbeast was a call-in show focusing on a giant devil creature called the Jerkbeast and his human friend answering viewer call-ins. When someone would call, they would be berated and insulted ruthlessly until they eventually gave up and hung up the phone. Oftentimes, this would result in viewers throwing insults back and the call devolving into complete chaos.
Oh, shut up! The purpose of this show is to tell you to shut the fuck up! You call in, I'll grip you a new asshole! God damn it! I'm gonna fucking kill you if you call in! Speak, you asshole!
Asshole, speak, you asshole.
Say something interesting before I come through this camera and rip you a new one.
Say something interesting. Why don't you go to the dentist, man?
Why don't you shut the fuck up?
Why don't you go to the dentist?
What's even more interesting is in the beginning of the episodes, people watching were encouraged to call in and start an argument. The strange nature of the show actually led to it developing a small cult following, and it even got its own indie movie and a short-lived punk rock band. The Great Satan at Large. Possibly one of the most offensive public access programs ever aired, The Great Satan at Large was an anti-religious broadcast starring a host dressed as Satan. He'd make crude jokes, rant about philosophy, and blast rock music, and would even take viewer call-ins or sometimes do interviews. Because of its incredibly offensive nature, the show received immediate backlash from religious groups that viewed it. And after only a short few months run, it was taken off the air permanently for extreme obscenity. And I mean, yeah, I definitely see why after watching an episode or two. Sister Who presents. Meet Sister Who, a spiritual nun who hosted a public access show dedicated to personal and spiritual growth. The program was a pretty light-hearted religious one, which is actually pretty wholesome compared to a lot of other entries on this list. But there's just one problem. Sister Who looks really, really creepy. He undoubtedly means well, but he just exudes this eerie presence that's difficult to ignore, and it just ends up stealing the entire show. And as with most public access programs, the production value for Sister Who Presents is noticeably low, which unfortunately ends up adding to the unnerving vibe. At its core, the show is well-intentioned, and I respect Sister Who for trying to make the world better in his own unique way. But it's certainly not something you'd want to accidentally encounter while flipping through channels at 2 a.m. Unwind with the Sweeties. I want to be clear, I'm not here to say this is absurd and should be banned, but this show is, without exaggeration, one of the most uncomfortable things I have ever seen in my life. Unwind with the Sweeties features a fully masked cast with awkwardly sexual or adult sitcom-style plots. The series feels almost like the creators were deliberately pushing the boundaries of TV just for the sake of it. Of all the shows on this list, I desperately would not want to have to watch this one with my parents. Just to give you an idea, I could only get through half of one episode before feeling so awkward I just had to stop. The combination of the entirely masked cast, hypersexualized humor, and bizarre style gives it a super disturbing feel. And even in a list of creepy public access shows, this one stands out as being genuinely skin-crawling in a way that's difficult to put into words. Unwind with the Sweeties didn't mean to be scary, and it certainly didn't mean to be so sexual that you had to turn it off, but that's just the way it ended up. And something about the fact that the creators probably didn't intend for it to feel this creepy just makes it even worse. It's sad to me that public access stopped being available to the public, but when I look at shows like this, I think I see why. Animal Trash. Animal Trash features a cast of cheap and oddly disturbing, disheveled-looking animal puppets, who in the very first episode end up murdering one of their best friends. From there, they embark on a series of grotesque, adult-themed adventures using old-school practical effects that somehow make everything feel even more unsettling. The humor is surreal and violent, and the dialogue is chaotic and hard to follow at times. The more you watch, the more depraved it gets, and the more it starts to feel like a bad outtake from the Muppets. The remnants of this show that still remain feel like something that wasn't ever meant to be watched in the first place. Like something that briefly surfaced in our world just before slipping back into whatever strange, eldritch horror chasm it came from.
Oh, God, it smells like Bruce Valanche in here! Oh, I take it you poopers have already dug up the corpse?
No, that's just Phil. He doesn't shower.
Not with the CIA watching.
I got Waldo right here! Well, let's take a look here. Oh, God! What'd you do to his face? It looks like a half-finished game of Jenga in there.
King Koopa's Cool Cartoons. King Koopa's Cool Cartoons was a short-lived spin-off of the 1989 Super Mario Bros. Show. Distributed by Fox, it aired in Los Angeles and some parts of Arizona during the mid-90s. The show featured King Koopa opening fan mail and having conversations with other Mario characters, in front of a live audience of children which he called his Koopa Troopas. There were also a lot of segments where King Koopa would decide to play an old 1920s public domain cartoon, which just goes to show the level of extreme laziness here. If that weren't already enough for the show to do badly, the design of the King Koopa costume is absolutely bone-chilling to look at. Who ever thought that this would be in a kids show? Why? Why did you do this? What's your problem? If you've ever wondered what having schizophrenia feels like, What's Your Problem is probably a great show for you. What's Your Problem features a man trying to eat his food, while constantly being taunted by an evil, disembodied voice. The man is defending himself angrily the entire time while trying to eat his raw, uncooked fish, and that's pretty much it. There's no real plot to this show, it's just this poor paranoid man arguing with a voice that isn't there. And for a long time, that's all we knew about What's Your Problem. But thanks to Blame It On Jorge, another great content creator who mentioned the show in one of his videos, online sleuths actually managed to get in contact with the original broadcasting company who made this. Turns out What's Your Problem was actually one of 4 skits that they aired, the other 3 previously being lost. But when the broadcasting company heard about all of the interest in these skits, they actually published them online. One of the skits featured a man holding up random objects and saying over and over again,
Are we having fun yet?
There's another one of a clown that keeps pulling random dangling levers while talking to another unseen voice. The clown keeps listening to these philosophical arguments that the voice will present and then saying, well yeah, but...
A green branch in your heart, the singing bird will come.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
Beware of all enterprises which require new clothes.
Well, yeah, but...
And finally, a guy who reads a newspaper explodes a planet and then decides to shave for some reason. That one is definitely the weirdest one, in my opinion. It's really interesting to see the rest of the media here that never would have been found if it weren't for YouTube. And although all of these skits are really, really weird and not something that I would usually seek out anyways, it's cool to see that an online community managed to band together to find a piece of art like this and keep it alive. Chip the Black Boy. Chip the Black Boy is less of a traditional show and more of a nightmarish fever dream set to music. The program centers around Chip, a disturbing lifeless puppet who sings and dances in a series of surreal, low-budget music videos. The weird, high-pitched puppety voice, mixed with the choppy editing style of the show, makes the entire thing feel like a bad Adult Swim bumper. But easily the creepiest part of the show are the messages of Chip's songs themselves. The lyrics are cryptic and often occult-like, and most of the time just straight up disturbing to listen to. Watching Chip the Black Boy feels like sitting through the unraveling of someone's sanity. as if the creator was on the verge of snapping. The whole time, it has you waiting for the jump scare moment that thankfully never comes. Just take a listen to one of his songs and tell me this doesn't make you feel incredibly uncomfortable in your skin.
Am I weird? Am I everything you fear? Am I the voice in the void in the space between your ears? Am I leading you to hell? While you're wishing well? Am I bolting you to heaven with a hypnagogic spell? Can you smell it on my breath? Is it the whispering of death or the slumbering aroma of the cousin of a coma?
Mystic Kids Funtime. Every once in a while doing a project like this, you find a little hidden gem that nobody else seems to have found. And this is that gem. Mystic Kids Funtime in and of itself is a really weird show. It has trippy visuals and a really strange concept. The idea was that viewers would call in and ask the wise ancient puppet characters for advice on issues. The weird visuals and concept alone earn it a place on this list regardless. But the reason it's so deep down is because of one particular person who participated in the making of the show. For those of you who don't know him yet, allow me to introduce Alex Jones. Alex Jones is a famous online conservative news host known for his super extremist views. He's also well known for his many meme clips that have come out over the years. For example, this one.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay. Do you understand that? Serious crap.
What makes Mystic Kids Funtime such a gem is that Alex Jones actually voiced one of the strange obelisk characters for a few episodes. And no one online seems to have figured this out yet. What a strange, interesting little find from Alex Jones's past. And to make things even better, in a YouTube comment, the creator of the show mentioned that they ended up kicking Alex off because nobody got along with him. To know that an incredibly controversial and well-known meme artist was in this random 90s kids show makes it one of the most bizarre and unexpected entries on the list. And what makes the whole situation even funnier is that you can absolutely tell that a young Alex Jones voiced this character.
Basically,
yeah, the Austin Police Department's, last time I heard, has 20 units with infrared. If you have enough of a heat source in your house, it'll pick up the heat source and show a signature.
Controlled by the magic seer that is in your eye, through Sheba and through our time masqueraded, unto the end of all time the people do.
The Asylum For Shut-ins Video Psychotherapy. The Asylum For Shut-ins Video Psychotherapy was a self-proclaimed therapeutic program, which encouraged its viewers to experience video psychotherapy through its strange and often surreal segments. Hosted by Dr. Arthur Mendelsohn, the show often featured masked guests dressed in weird costumes as they worked through their issues, which often involved acid trip-like performance art pieces. Throughout these segments, Dr. Mendelsohn would calmly discuss the psychological implications of various cases presented in the show, often offering disjointed and really bad advice about how to fix the problem. The show is disorienting to watch, and at times it can even be violent. Sitting through a full episode without looking behind you is almost impossible. And before I show you this one, a quick warning to headphone users. The audio is really all over the place.
You like video psychotherapy? You want some more?
You'll get more. Much more.
You'll get video psychotherapy until you scream and sweat and cry.
Dinner Dancing with Frank Pachowski. Sometimes art can be strange, and sometimes it can be dinner dancing with Frank Pachowski. This show essentially consists of our dancer, Frank Pachowski, smothering himself in various random foods and condiments and dancing around in front of a group of random old people. He would smother salad dressing, peanut butter, chicken, raw egg, and whatever else he had on hand all over himself. Then he would proceed to perform, dancing around to a soundtrack of bagpipes, and sometimes he would wet fart? Dinner dancing isn't necessarily a dark or scary show, it's just really nauseating to watch. I actually figured out after writing this entry that Frank went on to try and make his own game show. Essentially, the premise was meant to be that contestants would be forced to sit through really annoying talent shows, and whoever decided to quit last would be the winner. Unfortunately for Frank, this show never got picked up, and I mean, honestly, I don't know how I feel about that concept anyways. But it looks like for the time being, all that we'll see of Frank Pachowski are the few clips of his show that he uploaded to his YouTube channel. That's Not Funny, That's Sick. Originally filmed in Syracuse, New York, That's Not Funny, That's Sick was a skit-based TV show featuring an array of random performances and bits. Ranging from incredibly disturbing Vietnam-based war films to South Park-style racy humor, the show really didn't have any limits or any particular focus. It's difficult to tell exactly what you'll get with this show because of the massive range of subject matter. Some of these skits are completely fine to watch, and sometimes even enjoyable. But then other times you get things like this.
I'm so happy because these kids are starting to go back to school. I like little kids. I like to look at little kids. They're so cute. Little kids, they're so cute. Little kids, oh God, little kids.
That's not funny. That's sick.
If you want to check it out, just be warned that the subject matter can be really disturbing and awkward at times, as I'm sure you can tell. The Cap'n Video Show. Before the crew of Jackass could run, Cap'n Video walked. Cap'n Video's program consisted purely of him performing extremely dangerous stunts for laughs. He would smash raw eggs and snort them up his nose, jump off his roof or other high places, or do other Jackass-style bits. The show really was a great example of what public access can be. Cap'n Video was just a random guy with a camera and a simple goal: laughter. Unfortunately though, fate had other plans for him. While filming an infamous stunt where he jumped off a ladder into his cold pool, he would slip and break his neck on the edge. Luckily for Cap'n Video, he was quickly found by a couple of onlookers and was given the proper medical care to survive. Cap'n Video was just a crazy guy with a camera that wanted to make the world a little bit brighter. And honestly, I really enjoyed watching his show. This is one of those I'd recommend putting in your back pocket and saving for a rainy day. Joy Junction. On the surface of it, Joy Junction was a popular religious children's TV show meant to teach lessons about faith and morality. It would feature a cast of puppets and ventriloquists who would learn lessons and have discussions together each episode. And I'm 100% sure you already see the problem here. Puppets, puppets, puppets. The puppets were absolutely terrifying looking due to the low budget of the program. That alone might make it a little eerie already, but the real horror comes from one of the show's ventriloquists, Ron Brown. While working for his church and voicing one of the puppets on the show, Ron would talk openly online about how he wanted to kidnap, assault, and cook the bodies of young children, mentioning ages even as young as 2 years old. Ron was actually famously pulled over at a traffic stop at one point when a police officer saw a young boy's underwear in his car, but he was let off after he said it was for his puppets. In 2013, Ron was charged with possession of inappropriate child films and was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Knowing this fact, Joy Junction becomes an entirely different and even more creepy experience, with some of the jokes and comments Ron would make becoming way darker through this lens. And once you know this, you can never really look at it the same way again.
Playing around, and all of a sudden these kids over in the next yard said, "Marty, come over here a minute. We want to show you our pictures." Oh, they had some pictures to show you? Yeah. Well, I thought they were going to show me some pictures of their vacation they took in Arizona not long ago. Well, that sounds like fun. Did you go on over? Yeah, I decided to go on over next door. And do you know what it was? What was it, Marty? Well, it was in Arizona, I'll tell you that right now. Ron, they were looking at some dirty pictures and they wanted me to look too.
Dirge for the Charlatans. Sometimes success comes at a cost, and for Clay Tiffany it came at a grave one. Dirge for the Charlatans was a journalism show run by a journalist and reporter named Clay Tiffany, who would investigate the wrongdoing of police and politicians in his hometown, and then broadcast what he found on live TV. Obviously, this show earned Clay a lot of enemies in high places, which eventually led to him being pulled over by a police officer and massive bodybuilder named Nicholas Tartaglione. Nicholas told Clay that he had to stop poking the sleeping bear, told him that he was working with the mafia, and then beat and assaulted him within an inch of his life. Crazily enough, this actually did not scare off the apparently fearless reporter Clay, who actually decided that this incident meant that he had to do more investigating into specifically Nicholas alone. He found out that Mr. Tartaglione had a massive history of wrongdoing and assault on the job, and Clay was actually beaten multiple times because of the reports he would make on this information. This continued in a cycle for multiple different cases, where Clay would find some wrongdoing that Nicholas did, Nicholas would beat Clay, and then Clay would poke the bear further. And even though Clay was sent to the hospital multiple times, he never backed down, and he didn't shy away from even hosting one of the episodes from his hospital bed. Eventually, Clay did end up passing several years later of natural causes, but not before he sued the police department and won a massive settlement for his mistreatment. And if you were curious at any point if maybe Nicholas Tartaglione really hadn't done anything wrong, he was actually arrested after Clay died in connection to a murder and theft case. He was involved in the killing and torturing of 4 young men he met in a bar and earned a life sentence for it, so yeah, it's safe to say that Nicholas was a dirty cop. Also, a crazy fun fact here I discovered while editing this video is that Tartaglione was actually the last person to share a prison cell with none other than Jeffrey Epstein. Tartaglione was actually the one who reported Epstein's self-unaliving to the guards. So yeah, take that for what you will, I guess. There's definitely a lot more you can find online about this one, and needless to say, it's a massive rabbit hole in itself, especially with it being connected to the death of Jeffrey Epstein. If you're at all curious, I would definitely recommend digging into this one after this video. And honestly, I'm even debating doing a whole video about this one just in and of itself because there's so much information here to cover. But for now, Clay Tiffany's fight for journalism honesty definitely deserves to be remembered and goes down in my book as one of the craziest stories in public access history. The Fun with Roadkill Handbook. Given we're in the final layers now, pretty much every show we discuss from here on out is disturbing in its own right. But there's a difference between surreal, strange talk shows and gross out humor, and literal on-screen dead animals, which is exactly what this show contains. Obviously, YouTube won't allow me to just show you that, and honestly, I would guess you don't want to see it anyways. So this one contains some pretty heavy censoring. The Fun with Roadkill Handbook is, and I quote, your comprehensive guide for when 4 wheels meets 4 legs. The host pokes at and plays with dead animals while making dark puns and jokes about them. One episode even featured the host placing a dead animal in the road and having it run over by someone's car. Listen, dark humor is one thing, but actually going out and doing this and then having the balls to broadcast it on live TV is a completely different thing. These poor dead animals getting thrown around on TV for entertainment is just such a disgusting concept to me. And I honestly just have to question how this guy even came up with it in the first place. Did he used to do this often before hosting the show? This one really disgusts me in a visceral way I can't really describe, and that's all I have to say about it. I hope whoever made this disgusting thing finally came to their senses one day and realized what they were doing was horrible. And hopefully, if they did this as a hobby, they just stopped altogether. But quite frankly, who really even knows? Life without shame. Life Without Shame was a public access television show that changed the decency standards for public TV forever. Hosted by Tom and Ed, the show thrived on vulgar, offensive stunts. Most infamously, the Bum Olympics, where homeless people competed in various random tasks for a bottle of liquor. The entire thing is chock full of nudity and distasteful humor. The hosts also became infamous for nasty public comments about the ways they would treat women and domestic violence. Let's just say they were saying that they didn't need permission for some things which they definitely needed permission for. The things that they said and did with this program were so terrible that many people in the area actually began boycotting cable altogether in a desperate attempt to try and get it off the air. And eventually, all the controversy would finally come to a head when an episode was banned from airing in 1997. This caused a lengthy legal battle which led to a judge ruling that Time Warner, the broadcasting company, was allowed to ban indecent episodes, but only on a specific case-by-case basis, meaning that although Time Warner could ban an episode or two here and there, they couldn't ban Tom and Ed from submitting any episode that they wanted and continuing to make their show in whatever way they saw fit for the most part. But Time Warner didn't take that verdict lying down, and constantly banned any episode they could find an excuse to ban. Eventually, the constant bans and extreme controversy did kill the show, which finally came to an end in 1999. But its ghost lives on as a reminder of just how shameless some people are willing to be for fame. And the lengthy legal battles that Tom and Ed were involved in ended up leading to a whole new standard for public access as a genre.
Fries, a gallon, wild Irish rose.
Hey, don't drop it! Don't drop that bottle!
Frank Moore's Unlimited Possibilities. Frank Moore was a quadriplegic performance artist born with cerebral palsy who hosted a public access show called Frank Moore's Unlimited Possibilities. The show was an uncensored, unpredictable, and deeply bizarre journey into the mind of an avant-garde performance artist. Unable to speak due to his condition, he used a laser pointer and letterboard to communicate with assistants on the show, who would help him perform necessary tasks. During his program, he would show up completely naked and lead viewers in participation-encouraged erotic rituals. The show has a very creepy feel to it that immediately stood out to me as being cult-like in nature. After doing some digging into Frank, I figured out that he was actually a prolific creator of content like this. So much so that his Wikipedia even refers to him as a shamanistic teacher. I also found a documentary about his life made by a group of his followers who openly referred to his performances as a cult. So yeah, it's definitely a cult. What makes this show so interesting to me is that this is perhaps the only time, I have ever heard of at least, that a cult openly broadcasted their meetings for anyone to see. If you ever wondered to yourself what cults actually do, this is it, right here. This is what they do. If you want to check it out after this video, do be aware that there's a lot of adult imagery in this one, but it is also a very interesting and real-world view into the world of an actual real-life cult. Race and Reason. Public access was truly open to anyone out there despite their intentions, and Race and Reason is a good example of just how badly that premise can go. I'm going to go ahead and throw out a special content warning for this one, as it heavily involves topics of race and just straight up blatant racism. Race and Reason was run by a former Ku Klux Klan member named Tom Metzger. He was a popular figurehead for the white Aryan resistance and a proud and open racist while running this show. I'm sure you can imagine how the public reacted to those views being broadcasted, but because of the laws around public access, there really wasn't much anyone could do. There were rules about what a show could and couldn't say, and unfortunately, Tom managed to use those rules to his advantage to keep the show running. After a little while, the Kansas City Council managed to find a loophole in show classifications that allowed them to take down the program, but it didn't work for long. Tom would actually come back and sue the city for taking him off the air, which actually led to them reinstating Tom's channel. Race and Reason is a good example of the difficulty with public content creation, and much like some disturbing content found on YouTube in its earlier days, moderators that weren't expecting something like this just had no idea how to deal with it. Public creation at its base is a difficult thing, and knowing where to draw the metaphorical line has always, and probably will always, cause some serious debate and difficulty among the showrunners. And even though sometimes it's hard to tell exactly where the limits should be, I think we can all agree that Race and Reason definitely never should have aired in the first place. And I'm glad to say that this one remains solidly in the past, hopefully to be forgotten. And with that, we've officially reached the end of the public access Iceberg. Thank you all for sticking around this long. This was my very first Iceberg video and the first Iceberg I've ever actually made, so I really appreciate you making it this far. I hope you all enjoyed it, and hopefully there were at least a few entries that you'd never heard of before. I would also like to mention that there were several entries that I cut out of this video because I didn't feel that they were appropriate for YouTube. There were several public access shows out there that were originally composed in a layer 5 of this iceberg. But because of the incredibly graphic information and visuals in those shows, I ended up taking them out because I felt that YouTube just straight up wouldn't allow it. So if you're curious, you can check out the iceberg on my Instagram, where I haven't omitted any names of any of the shows that were meant to be in the original list. But believe me, there's a good reason why I didn't cover every last one of them, so buyer beware and all that, you have been warned. Anyways, if you liked it, let me know in the comments, and maybe I'll make another iceberg on something else in the future. I was maybe thinking about doing an Unsolved Mysteries one, since you guys like that video, it seems like. And as always, until next time, good luck sleeping.